We have made it to the offseason here in year number 2 at the Chicago White Sox franchise here on MLB The Show 25. Coming off a 63-99 season, obviously the team still has a ways to go in order to get where we want to be. But I feel like the vibes have never been higher for a team who just missed out on triple-digit losses. We saw some of the young guys really play well over the final month of the year, and it seems like for the first time in this series, we can really see the light at the end of the tunnel. The White Sox ended up having a very respectable September, headlined by the call-ups of young guys like Edgar Quero and Braden Montgomery, both of whom made a very good first impression at the big league level. Braden Montgomery in particular, he had 2 home runs in this final game against the Mariners, including the walk-off to win it where we were trailing by 1 with 2 outs. Quero was called up early in the month and he was awesome. 5 home runs, he hit .330, and it's kind of wild to think about because the 3.5 to 4 months he was healthy in AAA, his home run total and his WAR were lower than the 1 month he spent in the major leagues. As for Montgomery, in just 32 at-bats, he had 7 extra base hits, including 4 homers. His first 2 at-bats inside of his home stadium, home run, home run. The last 2, back-to-back home runs, including, obviously, the walk-off against the Mariners to keep us out of triple digits in the loss column. We still finished in last place by far, and one of the most stacked divisions, really, in the history of Major League Baseball. So let's look at how we got to this point as the second worst team in the league, which is progress. The last 2 years, the White Sox combined to only win 100 games and were the worst team overall in each of those 2 seasons. The offense was our weak link last year, but this season they were actually quite respectable. 15th in runs, higher than the Tigers, who won 95 games. We were second in at-bats, which I found quite interesting, and 4th in plate appearances. So I guess we're extending games a while, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. 17th in batting average, again, pretty much right towards the middle. 16th in on-base percentage, very solid. In terms of slugging, we were a little bit lower in 20th, so our OPS was below average. I think it was the worst, if not one of the worst last year, so progress. 16th in hits, 11th in doubles. We were in the middle in triples. Shout out to Brian Ramos, who of course had 11, which was 3rd in all of baseball, only trailing Jeremy Pena and Bobby Witt Jr. How does one get 14 triples in a season? That's crazy. Tied for 15th in home runs. Granted, most of our power production came from Luis Robert, Brian Ramos, and 4 months of Kyle Schwarber. 15th in RBIs, 19th in stolen bases, and we were fairly efficient on the base paths this year, coming in 9th place. Douglas Cato was actually tied for the team lead in stolen bases, even though he was only healthy for like a month. The big problem with the offense is that there's no clutch gene. Second most double plays. So the offense went from one of the worst to pretty decent within the span of only a year. The biggest reason is probably the production of Luis Robert, who homered 40 times, OPS in the 930s. Brian Ramos picked up where he left off last year. Obviously, 4 months of Kyle Schwarber helped out. The offense was really the thing that I thought we were going to have to focus on when building this team. But I feel like for this offseason, we kind of had the group in place. Maybe we add another impact veteran bat or 2. But I think we have the building blocks and the foundation of our lineup for years to come, especially if we figure out what the plan is with Luis Robert, who finished in 4th in all of baseball in WAR, only behind Julio Rodriguez, Ketel Marte, and Jose Ramirez. We didn't trade him away at the deadline. It's clear we want to extend him, but having to deal with Jerry Reinsdorf, it might not be so easy. And if he does not let us sign him to a $250+ million contract, we might have no choice but to trade him away. So it'll be an interesting dilemma that we have to follow along with over the offseason. I thought the pitching staff was the strength of the team in year 1. This year, it was the weakness, and the biggest reason why. We only won 63 games. I mean, the offense scored more runs than the Tigers, for Christ's sakes, who won 30 more games than us. We were dead last in runs allowed, second in earned runs allowed. So, for one thing, that tells me the defense was not very good. 29th in errors and 28th in fielding percentage. That's pretty bad, along with the fact that we allowed more runs than anybody. Second worst ERA. We allowed more hits than any pitching staff in all of baseball. We allowed the most amount of home runs. We were towards the bottom in walks, but not completely. And we were towards the middle in strikeouts. The bullpen, though, as we know, was a disaster. We had the least amount of saves while finishing with the most amount of blown saves. I don't know about you guys, but I think that's a problem. The lack of the clutch gene, again, showing here with the bullpen, while the starting rotation was very inconsistent because we had so many guys switching in and out. Drew Thorpe and Bailey Falter were the only players who stayed in the rotation all year. Everybody else switching because of health or injuries. Now, we do have some good young pieces here. Noah Schultz struggled early. Over the last 3 months, though, I thought he was really solid. Hagen Smith, we only had him for half a season, but when he was healthy, he looked really good. Had a fantastic rookie year, and I think Thorpe, Schultz, and Smith could very well be the long-term 1, 2, 3 of our rotation, but we've still got to fill out those other 2 spots, whether it's guys already in the organization or maybe guys who we have to pick up. Much of the young core that we've been excited about has finally made it up to the big leagues, with guys like Hagen Smith, Edgar Caro, Braden Montgomery, and others making their big league debuts this year. So now that those guys are up, it's really about developing these young players and for these guys to learn how to win with each other. Going into next year, the expectation is not that we win 60 games. This team theoretically should be a lot better with all these young guys continuing to improve. I also want to point out that I have gone through every roster. I have edited players based on their performance. Luis Robert, for instance, after the great season he had, is now a 91 overall. With all the major league and minor league guys I edited, it had to have been close to maybe 1,000 players. I don't know about 1,000, but it was a lot. In terms of other guys who changed ratings, Hagen Smith went up a little bit. Brian Ramos went up. Colson Montgomery went down. His contact was obviously a disaster this year. -8 contact against lefties, and I think the game made some final changes with his ratings. He ended up going down by 11 against lefties. Acuna went down a little bit. Jonathan Cannon went down. Penn Murphy went down. Edgar Caro was a tricky one because he wasn't that good in AAA, but he was really good in the majors. So I decided not to touch him. His contact did go up a little bit after I simulated into the playoffs, though, so I guess that is worth noting. And that's what we're going to do now. Let's take a look at what the MLB playoffs looks like, what the final standings are, and go through some stats across all of baseball. The American League, as we know, is a bloodbath. Not just the AL Central, but the entire AL as a whole. The Baltimore Orioles, who I felt like were the team to beat last year, they win 96 games, and they're better than they were a year ago. They've added Mike Trout. The rotation is better. They have to win it soon because Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman are going to be free agents at some point. The Red Sox make it in as the third wild card, while Minnesota and Cleveland tie at 99 wins. Nobody won more games in Major League Baseball than these two teams. They had the best record in baseball in the same division. Cleveland had the best record in the league, and their reward is a 3-game wild card series against the 95-win Tigers. Detroit won 95 games, but they don't even get a home game in the opening playoff series. That's how brutal not just this division is, but the playoff seeding is as well. The Royals at 84 wins. They were the third wild card for much of the year, but they miss out, dropping to, obviously, the Red Sox. And then the Rangers, the reigning World Series champions, win 92 games. They were not in a very competitive division. I feel like they're not as battle-tested as teams like Cleveland and Minnesota and Detroit, but they have postseason experience. They've won 2 of the last 3 World Series. As for the NL, the team who the Rangers beat in the World Series last year, the Phillies, win 97 games. They'll be the 2 seed. Atlanta and the Mets, disappointing down the stretch. The Mets in particular, Kyle Schwarber was great over the last 2 months, but they end up missing the playoffs. The Brewers win 92 games. They take the Central with the Cubs and Reds making it into the playoffs. Those 2 teams would have not even been close to the AL wild card. And then in the West, 98 wins for the Dodgers. They're the number 1 seed, while the Padres make it in as a wild card as well. The worst team in baseball was the Washington Nationals. They only won 55 games, which is quite low. The Rockies had the same record as us, 63 and 99. Let's take a look at some of the notable stats and awards across Major League Baseball, and then we will simulate our playoffs. So the batting champion in the AL is Yordan Alvarez with the Houston Astros. In the NL, Matt Olson ekes it away from Ellie De La Cruz. Nobody had more hits than Nathaniel Lowe, nearly 200, while Vladimir Guerrero Jr. led the NL in his first season with the Dodgers. Ahmed Rosario and Nathaniel Lowe lead in at-bats. Bobby Witt had the most doubles, while Elly De La Cruz led in the NL. Bobby Witt, 14 triples. That's a lot, with Brian Ramos at 11. Kevin Alcantara had 10, along with Elly De La Cruz, who had the best year of his career with the Reds. 50 home runs for Anthony Santander. He's able to beat out Gunnar Henderson for the AL home run title, while Kyle Schwarber takes it in the NL. And then Pete Alonso, ironically enough, comes in second. Gunnar Henderson leads in RBIs with Aaron Judge and Luis Robert just one away, while Manny Machado narrowly edges out Kyle Schwarber. Gunnar Henderson and Juan Soto and Ronald Acuna lead in runs. Dayron Blanco is the stolen base champion in the AL, while Elly De La Cruz had the most overall, 43. Most walks was, to no surprise, Juan Soto, but he's joined by Ronald Acuna. Good for him. Yordan Alvarez leads in on-base percentage by a lot. Geraldo Perdomo takes it in the NL. Gunnar Henderson, the only player in the AL with a slugging above 600, while Elly De La Cruz wins the slugging title by a lot in the NL. Gunnar Henderson and Yordan Alvarez are the only qualified hitters with an OPS above 1,000. I thought going into September that Jose Ramirez would have a chance at a 10-WAR season. It doesn't happen. He finishes at 8.8, which leads the majors by far. Garrett Crochet's 18 wins are the most in the AL, while Matt Waldron had 23. Good God. Brian Wu and Kyle Bradish, the lost champions, I guess, in the AL, while it's Jameson Taillon in the NL. Griffin Jax's 52 saves were the most in all of baseball. A very impressive season for the Twins closer. Brian Wu, 2.13 ERA, while Paul Skeens led in the NL at 2.06. Andre Pallante allowed the least amount of homers in terms of qualified starters. He had a good year, and his rating went up pretty handsomely as a result. A lot of guys with 2 shutouts in the AL, including Tanner Bybee. His numbers were ridiculous this year. 116 hits and 31 walks and 171 innings. That's absurd. He's going to get paid a lot pretty soon, while 3 guys with 2 in the National League. Jacob deGrom leads in strikeouts. Part of my rating system is that old players don't regress super quickly. Like in the case of Jacob deGrom, if you're going to continue to play well, I'm going to keep your rating somewhat high. Now, his ERA was the highest of his entire career, so he's still going to go down quite a bit, but he's an 87. He's still a good starting pitcher. Sandy Alcantara, 4 complete games. That is a lot. The AL Cy Young race was generational. There were 5 really deserving candidates. Alcantara, Tarek Skubal, Garrett Crochet, Brian Wu, Tanner Bybee. All of those guys deserved the award in their own right. The NL race was not as good, although shout out Mitchell Parker, allowing the least amount of walks. Bybee, Wu, Alcantara, and Crochet all with whips below 1. Paul Skeens and Justin Steele below 1 in the NL. Tarek Skubal led the AL in terms of pitching WAR. I really don't know why Tanner Bybee is so low. I feel like he should be grouped with that top 4 instead of 14th. While Paul Skeens leads the NL in WAR. Framber Valdez did not lead in any categories, but he was high in most of them. Gunnar Henderson, back-to-back MVPs. It was close between him and Yordan Alvarez, but Henderson ends up taking it home, while Kyle Schwarber wins it in the NL. Okay, this is kind of weird because, I mean, for one thing, Kyle Schwarber was not in the NL for 4 months. I don't really know if he deserves it. But we had the MVP on our team for 4 months, technically. I don't really think he should have gotten it, though, because he obviously doesn't play defense. And when he does, he's a net negative defensively. Biasedly, as a Manny Machado fan, I would want to pick him, but it really should have been Matt Olson of this group. Olson's WAR was pretty much equal to that of Schwarber and Machado's combined. So I'm not really sure why it was not him. Garrett Crochet wins the Cy Young, narrowly beating out Tarek Skubal and Sandy Alcantara. Matt Waldron, the knuckleballer, wins it in the NL. I think it should have been Paul Skeens. Framber Valdez has a good case as well. I think this game overrates wins way too much, and this kind of proves it. We already saw the batting title was won by Yordan Alvarez and Matt Olson. The reliever of the year, Griffin Jax in the AL, Tanner Scott in the National League. Jojo Romero, shout out Giants legend. Emmanuel Rodriguez, Rookie of the Year, very well deserved. Christian Morter, great year, he comes in second. Jack Caglione in third. I think it should have been Hagen Smith, even though he only played half the year. Even when he was healthy before he missed the last month, he still was not in the top 3. Austin Hendrick, meanwhile, wins it in the NL. Another cool thing about my rating system is that it's designed for there to be actually competitive Rookie of the Year races. In the AL, that's been the case in both seasons so far. Guys like Emmanuel Rodriguez and Christian Moore playing super well. In the NL, not so much. as Yordan Alvarez and Elly De La Cruz win the Hank Aaron's. We had a couple awards ourselves. A Gold Glove at first base for Emmanuel Rivera. I switched his position in the game to first base just so it would be fair. He still ends up winning a Gold Glove anyway. He would have hit third base. His WAR is wrong, though. It was really 1.9. So I'll switch him back to third base before the offseason so that can be accurate. But still, pretty cool that he has an award. One of the unsung heroes of this team. Didn't put up the big numbers, but really, really reliable. Very good defensively. And by moving him over to first base, we give Nolan Arenado another Gold Glove. You're welcome, buddy. He's regressed a lot offensively, but he now has 11 Gold Gloves. That is ridiculous. Luis Robert, as we know, wins a Gold Glove in center field. Very well deserved. The second of his career. He won one as a rookie in the shortened 2020 season, and he barely lost out on a Silver Slugger spot. He was the fourth outfielder to get it. Now, I can't really complain because Aaron Judge, Yordan Alvarez, and Anthony Santander, their pure offensive numbers were all a little bit better. Even if Luis Robert was a better baseball player than those guys because of what he provides defensively, the Silver Slugger is about offense, and he was the fourth best offensive outfielder in the AL. All right, let's talk playoffs. My favorite part of the bracket is this quadrant from hell with the Guardians, Tigers, and Twins all in the same group. Only one of those teams is going to make the ALCS. That is going to be a bloodbath. If Texas gets by Boston, I'm excited about a possible Rangers-Orioles matchup, two very experienced teams. And then in the NL, the Dodgers and the Phillies, both of them are very experienced. Milwaukee as well. That group has gone through a lot of playoff runs. I would expect it to be one of those three, one of the three division winners to make it out of the NL, but we'll ultimately see what ends up happening. We also go through the minor league playoffs as well. I was hoping to hop into one of the AA games, but unfortunately neither of them were very close, and we lost them both. So no championships in AA or AAA. We were close, but no cigar. So let's take a look at the playoff results through the wild card round. Cleveland, 99 games. Nobody won more games this year than the Guards. Yet they are out in the wild card round. The Tigers will play Minnesota. We will get Baltimore and Texas, a rematch of the ALCS from last year. We've got Cubs, Dodgers, and then Phillies and Brewers. Simulating to the AL and NLCS, Minnesota sweeps Detroit. The Rangers beat Baltimore. And then it will be the Dodgers and the Brewers. The Brewers beat Philadelphia in 4. The Orioles losing is probably the most fascinating result for me because, again, this team only has so much time with this core. Adley Rutschman has one more year left after this one. Gunnar Henderson has 2, and they're paying Mike Trout a lot of money. Trout still has never won a playoff series, although he does finally win a playoff game. I mean, Gunnar Henderson hitting 150 will kind of do that to you. So Twins, Texas, and then Dodgers, Brewers. Our World Series in 2026 will be the Rangers and the Brewers. The Rangers only need 5 games to beat Minnesota, so it will not be an AL Central team in the World Series. They will play against Milwaukee. I feel like Texas is the overwhelming favorite here. They've won 2 of the last 3 World Series titles. Former White Sox Jake Burger is balling out, but maybe Milwaukee pulls off the upset. The Rangers obviously have a loaded lineup, and to think if we traded away Luis Robert at the deadline, this is where it would have been. So he could have made the World Series. Instead, he is stuck on the White Sox. But with the postseason experience that this team, specifically Corey Seager, brings to the table, that certainly is exciting for the Rangers. Not to mention World Series MVP Evan Carter. Jacob deGrom has been shoving. Nathan Eovaldi, one of the best postseason pitchers of all time at this point. I don't think that's crazy to say. The number one thing the Brewers have going for them, though, is deja vu. Let's travel to Season 2 of the Giants franchise last year. Brewers-Rangers World Series. The Rangers were the heavy favorite, and the Brewers won. And they won quickly in only 5 games to get the job done. Well, here we are in Season 2 of this series. It's the Rangers and the Brewers yet again. Christian Yelich has had a fantastic playoff run. Jackson Chourio, at just 22 years old, playing in his first career World Series. William Contreras, Bryce Terang. This team has plenty of star power. And to think we almost traded Kyle Schwarber here. We would have gotten Brock Wilken at third base. He ends up playing in the World Series instead. The pitching rotation was really inconsistent for them this year. Nestor Cortez had a great year, but Dylan Cease, Freddie Peralta, those guys were a little disappointing, but they can right the ship here in the World Series. The bullpen was really good throughout the year for the Brewers, although they will be without their closer. Trevor McGill, who was an all-star, and they're also going to be without Joseph Ortiz, their third baseman. The Rangers, meanwhile, completely healthy. The Rangers are the better team, they're the healthier team, and the AL was much more of a bloodbath than the NL. So all signs are pointing towards the Rangers, who get blasted in Game 1. 21 hits and 12 runs for Milwaukee. Jackson Chourio and Garrett Mitchell go deep, while Jake Burger homered 3 times in the loss for the Rangers. An all-time World Series performance for Burger. Homers 3 times, and they lose by 8. That is wild. Game 2, on the road, also goes to the Brewers. They win 1-0. Christian Yelich drives in the lone run. Freddie Peralta did not have a great regular season, did not have a great playoff run, but he goes 8 scoreless to carry his team to the win. Game 3 in Milwaukee also goes to the Brewers. They win it 7-1. Robbie Girard drives in the only run for Texas as Jackson Chourio homers twice and drives in 6 runs. Dylan Cease, 6 innings, 1 hit, no runs allowed. Brewers going for the sweep, and they do it. They beat Jacob deGrom twice. They crushed him in Game 1. deGrom was a little better in Game 4. But Milwaukee sweeps the Rangers. They beat them in dominant fashion. Yelich and Turang both go deep, while Nestor Cortez throws 8 scoreless. I mentioned the rotation was shaky this year for the Brewers. Brandon Woodruff nearly goes 8 innings in Game 1. Dylan Cease, 6 scoreless in Game 3. Freddie Peralta, 8 scoreless in a 1-0 Game 2 win. And then Nestor Cortez, I believe, went 8 scoreless in Game 4. Jake Burger obviously wins the postseason MVP, while Christian Yelich wins the postseason and World Series MVP. I kind of thought it should have been Jackson Chourio, but Yelich was great as well. He had 8 hits across the 4 games, including a homer in the decisive Game 4. Milwaukee's had him on the trade block all year. I don't know why. I imagine he will not be anymore. But look at the resume. Bunch of All-Stars, an MVP, Silver Sluggers. Now he has a playoff and a World Series MVP. If he can improve the counting stats a little bit, and he's got time, he's at 91, he's got some years left. If he can improve the counting stats over the next 3 or 4 years, I think you're looking at a Hall of Famer with Christian Yelich, which is crazy because at the beginning of that long contract, it was looking like he was going downhill fast. The Brewers finally get over the hump. They finally win the World Series, and the timing is kind of funny because I thought their team was better last year. But history is a weird way of repeating itself. In Season 2 of the Giants series, the Brewers upset the Rangers in the World Series in 5 games. Season 2 of this series, they upset the Rangers even quicker in 4 games. So now we are on to the offseason. We will start with retirements. Nobody in our organization is calling it a career. That's good. I figured with all the injuries we had, maybe somebody would. Former White Sox Liam Hendriks is here, one of the good guys of Major League Baseball, an all-time great story with him, and a really good player. 3-time All-Star, 2-time reliever of the year. Christian Vasquez is in there. That's a big one. Travis d'Arnaud. Wander Suero retires off of an injury. Matt Boyd is in there. Only really pitchers and catchers in terms of guys on teams. And then in the free agency, Nick Ahmed was there. Chris Bassett. Aroldis Chapman. That's a pretty big one. Does he have a Hall of Fame case? I think he can argue it. Jose Cisnero. Mike Clevenger, who was on our team last year. Alex Cobb ends up calling it a career. Former White Sox All-Star Avisail Garcia made it in 2017. Perfect Game, Domingo Germán, Kyle Gibson, Marco Gonzalez, Nico Goodrum, Tigers legend. Kyle Hendricks is here. Aaron Hicks, Kenley Jansen. Is there a Hall of Fame case with him? How about Craig Kimbrell? A lot of big-time relievers are done. Dinelson Lamet, DJ LeMahieu, Michael Lorenzen, all retire. Kenta Maeda, thank God. Starling Marte, Andrew McCutchen. I feel like we wasted an opportunity with him and Nick Maton to be on the same team. If you know, you know. Tommy Pham, Zach Plesac, Drew Pomeranz, Ryan Presley, Martin Perez. He fractured his head in Season 1, and unfortunately, those were his last moments on a big league diamond. That's kind of depressing. Former White Sox All-Star Jose Quintana, Eddie Rosario, Carlos Santana, Max Scherzer. Likely a first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the best pitchers of this decade. Right up there with guys like Justin Verlander, Clayton Kershaw, Jacob deGrom. Hopefully all of those guys will be in Cooperstown. 3-time Cy Young, 8-time All-Star, World Series champion. Justin Turner is done. There's Ross Stripling, Kirby Yates, Alex Wood. And that is about it. Only one Hall of Famer in this class. It is Max Scherzer, very well deserved. I think there's an argument for some of those relievers, though. Craig Kimbrell, Kenley Jansen, Aroldis Chapman, given that those guys are some of the best closers ever. All right, now we're on to the good stuff. The actual offseason. Exclusive free agents. No one. Okay, well, that's pretty easy. We can run it back if we want to. Maybe not what you want to do with a 63-win team. The draft picks are now here. There's our first rounder, Martin Burtz. We only have one major financial commitment. That's the new extension for Drew Thorpe that is now kicked in. So we're going to have some financial flexibility. How much? Who knows? We'll see what the offseason wheel ends up delivering for us. We obviously don't have to spend time on exclusive free agents because we have none. We do have a vacancy in terms of our manager. I like what Will Venable's been able to do in the sense of bringing the vibes to this team. But I don't think our team has been very well coached in the sense that in clutch spots, offense, defense, pitching, not great. So I think Venable was a good transition manager. I think now we need a guy who can lead us to some wins. 44-year-old Oscar Marin is the guy I'm going to target. +2 fielding, +2 plate vision. The strikeouts were the big weakness for the offense this year, so that's what I really want to improve upon. -2 arm accuracy I can live with. -1 velocity I can live with as well. We're going to offer him a 2-year deal for $5.7 million. All right, I think it's time to spin the off-season wheel. Remember, we get 2 spins here. So I've went through the comments, I read through the survey, and I've made some additions to the wheel along with some ones that we already had. The one that's on here the most is Jerry's World. Decreased the budget by 15%. Please, God, do not land on that one. That would be bad news. I don't know if there's a way to get out of that other than trading Drew Thorpe, which would be a major problem. We do not want to do that. Most of the tabs are on there twice. That one is on there 4 times. Splash Zone signed a top 30 free agent. Let's get aggressive. Roster shift. 35% of the projected roster must be new players who were out of the organization last year. That would certainly be an interesting one. I kind of hope we don't get that. The fix is in. Do the MLB draft lottery twice and pick the better result. Of course, we got the opposite one last year, picked the worst result. It was rigged against us. This is a new one. Let's spend. Increase the budget by 15%. I would not mind that one. Trade request. Top 5 player on the team requested trade. We got that one last offseason as well. And here's my favorite. Sell the team! You guys wanted me to add it, and truthfully, I had come up with the idea anyway. I just didn't add it in Season 1 because I didn't come up with the idea in time. But this one is on the wheel 4 times as well. So there's a real shot, given that Jerry Reinsdorf is 90. He's getting older. I don't want to say what would happen to him here on YouTube and get demonetized, but you all can paint the picture. He is an older gentleman. Decrease the budget. We already talked about that one. Handcuffed. All trades must be approved by Jerry Reinsdorf. Draft lottery rigged against us. We would pick the worst result. Big bank. So we have to sign a player to a long-term extension, but they would get 20% higher than their asking price. So they would get quite a bit of money. If it's Luis Robert, he would be getting a fat bag. Likely well over $300 million, if that's the case. So that would certainly be an interesting one. The injury bug. A top 5 player will miss the first half of next year with an injury or a suspension. One of the suggestions in the survey is that we have a Wander Franco situation. I don't think we're going to do that one specifically. Pressure mounting. Trade a top 5 prospect for a big leaguer. Youth movement. The average age of the projected roster must be at least 1 year younger than our team last year. Let's eat a W. Whatever our team ranking is right now, I think it's 26th. We would have to make it higher. That one would certainly be a good one. Ishbia Mania. So for those who don't know, the Ishbia family in real life purchased, I think, 35% of the White Sox. So they would take full control of the ownership. Those guys run the Phoenix Suns currently. The Suns have went from one of the bright futures in the NBA to one of the worst since the owners have come in. But it's not because they haven't tried. They have spent a lot of money on guys like Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal. So that is our wheel. Remember, we're going to do 2 separate spins. I'm hoping maybe we can get Jerry Reinsdorf out of here. That would certainly be pretty dope. So here we go. The first of 2 spins on the off-season wheel. We got unlucky both spins last year. Let's hope for a better result. Come on. Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! Yes! We're free! We're free! Jerry Reinsdorf is selling the Chicago White Sox! Ishbia Mania! the Ishbia family will take over as full-time owners of the White Sox. We've done it, guys. We're free. So either Jerry Reinsdorf has sold his entire stake in the team, or he went bye-bye. I don't know how else I'm allowed to explain it. I don't want the video to get demonetized. My bank account would get mad at me. But we're free! Jerry Reinsdorf is gone, so Matt and Justin Ishbia, the Ishbia brothers, will take over the team. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that our budget is going to be $250 million in terms of the salary. It's not quite that simple, but we're going to be able to spend a little bit more frugally. We don't necessarily have to penny pinch, and this means there will be major changes to the wheel next year. Much of the Jerry Reinsdorf related scenarios are going to be gone. We're still going to have an off-season wheel. There's still going to be a lot of bad possibilities, but it's going to look a lot different. So to describe what the Ishbia brothers have done with the Phoenix Suns, it hasn't been good. We're going to go here to the Warriors franchise as an example. Their best players currently are Bilal Coulibaly, Ryan Dunn, Jabari Smith, and OG Anunoby. They do have some talented young pieces, Laszlo Zonka and Shaquille Hunter, but the trades for Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal were not good. They do show two things: that the Ishbia brothers will do whatever it takes to win, and they're not afraid to spend money. So we're hoping we would get a little bit more lucky with this group, and maybe not do something as stupid as mortgage the future for Bradley Beal. We're going to keep the wheel as it is for the second spin, however, and if it lands on something Jerry Reinsdorf related, we may adjust as fit. But let's see what we land on first. We're going to spin that wheel again. We could land on something bad, and this would still be a win. Okay, this is a really interesting one. Youth movement. The average age of our projected MLB roster must at least be 1 full year younger than last year's team. In theory, it sounds good, because who doesn't want to get younger? But I don't think this is a good spin for us, because it really kills any spending flexibility we have in terms of getting veterans in free agency. Not only do we have to be a year younger than last year's team, but really we have to be 2 years younger, because everybody is a year older now. So I picked out the 26 guys who played the most on our team last year. Now, granted, there are guys who are not here, like Joe Ross and Kyle Schwarber, but I have included them because this was essentially the average roster of last year's team, and the average age was 27.6. So the projected opening day roster has to be 26.6 or younger. So that means we can't really add too many old players and too many veterans in free agency. So if you wanted to see the Ishbia brothers spend big money, this will not be the offseason to do it. There are some good players in this free agency class, though. Garrett Crochet and Tarek Skubal lead the way. Two of the best pitchers in all of baseball. Two guys who we're very familiar with. Skubal having played in our division his whole career, while Crochet spent 4 seasons with the White Sox. Jazz Chisholm is the best position player, another former White Sox, and Chris Sale. Not a ton of great position players, but it is a loaded pitching class, and I think that works in our favor because I want to focus on pitching. I want to add another starter, and obviously we got to make the bullpen better. Now that we have an ownership that's willing to spend money, we can be a little aggressive, but we have to be selective. We have to pick guys who are not going to kill the team's average age, given that that's one of our challenges for this offseason. We're also going to have to potentially clear out the 40-man roster as well. We currently have 42 spots, so we're going to have to take some guys off, maybe not offer certain players arbitration. We'll start with the tendering contract stage. Most of these guys we're going to tender. The real question is, do we extend anyone like Hagen Smith, Noah Schultz, Kyle Teal, Brian Ramos? Today will not be that day, but I will keep my options open. These guys, though, I'm not as sure because I don't really want to pay this group like $800,000 each, because it's hard seeing many of these guys contributing at the big league level next year. So we'll figure out what we're going to do with them. Maybe trade them away, maybe offer them less money, or maybe let them go entirely. As for arbitration, we don't have anybody that good in here, but there are some tough decisions we're going to have to make, and some players who we're probably going to let go, because players who are in arbitration make a lot more money in this year's game, which is a lot more realistic to be fair. But look at a guy like Bailey Falter, for instance. He wants $10 million this year. An extension for him would be like 5 years, 75. Like, no. That's a horrible deal. I get he was one of our only consistent arms, but that's crazy. Jesus Sanchez, who was not very good last year, he wants $5 to $6 million. And with the emergence of a guy like Braden Montgomery, that just doesn't really make sense. His OPS was 620. We love Jesus Sanchez around here. He's a channel legend for what he did in the Guardians and Marlins franchise, but that just seems unreasonable. So we're going to offer most of the guys in here. We're not going to offer Falter, Sanchez, Davis Martin, Matt Thaiss, or Bobby Dalbec. Shout out Big Hits Bobby for that one inning he pitched where he did accumulate a positive WAR, even though his FIP was negative. And we are going to offer everybody else here on the bottom. Bailey Falter, I would want to trade away because he has value. The other guys, I don't think we would really get much for. They would probably hit free agency. So in terms of the roster, though, as I said, I think we're in a good spot offensively in terms of the position players. Oswaldo Escobedo maybe comes up. Jacob Gonzalez is here. Douglas Cato will be healthy. Brady Montgomery and Edgar Caro competing for roster spots. They certainly left us a good impression in September. And then, as I mentioned with the pitching, especially if we trade Bailey Falter, we really need to add a veteran to this group. And then the bullpen, we cannot trot out this same unit. The bullpen was a joke. So we do have money to spend. We can't spend too much, and we can't go after guys who are too old. I think the priority for right now, though, is going to be adding a veteran starting pitcher. With Bailey Falter probably not here next year, we've got to add a vet because Drew Thorpe is the only guy who started the entire year. We're not going to get one of the top guys, but I think someone in like the 30 to 50 range would be a good idea. And then once we do that, I think we're going to look at the bullpen. The guy I think I want the most is German Marquez with the Colorado Rockies, who was a talented young player in the late 2010s, early 2020s. It seemed like things were going well for him, made an all-star team in 2021 as a Silver Slugger as well. But he only pitched 5 games over a 2-year stretch. Over the last 2 years, he's been rejuvenated. This year, 3.36 ERA, 1.16 whip, 2 of the best marks of his career, and he did it in Colorado, a team who has no talent and plays in the most hitter-friendly park in baseball. So his ERA plus probably would have been a lot lower if only that was in the game. Frankie Montas, I think, will be our backup option. He's missed a full season's worth of games over the last 2 years, and I don't think he's been quite as good as Marquez, so I would prefer Marquez, given that both of them are demanding the exact same amount of money. But I think those are the guys we're going to be targeting. Hopefully we can land one of them. I feel like the veteran we get has to be a righty, given that both Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith, who will probably be in the rotation next year, are both lefties. The important dates to remember are November 20th, because that's the last time we can change the 40-man, and November 23rd, because that's when we can offer arbitration. That'll be the deadline. Rival opportunity. The Tigers want Chris Sale. They must not believe they're going to bring back Tarek Skubal, if this is the case. I don't think it makes sense. I don't know why he'd want to come back to Chicago, though, and he's an older player who's probably chasing a championship. I don't think you're doing that here. German Marquez is not super interested, so we're going to have to play the waiting game, which kind of sucks. Before we simulate to week 3 of free agency, though, I do want to make a move involving Bailey Falter. I think this is where we trade him away. A team who needs a number 5 starter, who I'm not overly confident is going to spend for one, is the Cincinnati Reds. They've got a good group of 4. Chase Burns, the former number 2 overall pick, is their number 5 right now. I just don't think he's ready. He wasn't that good in the minors last year. I think he needs another year. So a guy like Falter would make sense. He's not great, but he was consistent. He played the whole year for us. So we're going to trade him and DJ Snelton, and we'll get back reliever Tony Santillan, 29 years old, had a pretty good season last year. He's in arbitration. The Reds don't really want to pay him, but he's better than most of the guys who we have available in the bullpen. He'd be an upgrade, so I would be happy to pay him. When I was editing many of the minor league ratings, the Reds had a lot of guys in the infield who stuck out. Victor Acosta, Shang-Ang Lin, and Leonardo Balcazar are all top 20 prospects in their system, and they all had really good seasons. Balcazar, I think, is the guy we're going to target. Solid contact, decent power, very good defensively. He can play second, he can play short. His primary position is third. For a 22-year-old who's played well in the minor leagues, I think production matters. And to have pretty solid potential, in my opinion, I think it's worth it for a guy in Bailey Falter who I don't really want to pay. Santillan's arbitration number is not going to be that big. He only is going to want around $800,000, I think. So we're not going to have to offer him too much. The first big domino has fallen. The Guardians have added Freddie Peralta. So a big move within the division. Clearly, they don't think they're going to bring back Shane Bieber. But this is not a bad consolation prize. Peralta's been one of the most consistent arms in the league over the last 5 years. He wasn't great this year. He had an inconsistent playoff run. But he threw 8 scoreless innings in a 1-0 World Series win on the road. Chris Bubich to the Orioles. They're going to continue to spend. I love the aggressiveness. I really don't know how they're going to afford Rutschman and Gunnar, but they're going all in on next year, which really might be their last chance, given that it's Rutschman's last year. Rival opportunity, Ryan Jeffers and the Twins. Minnesota wants to bring him back, and it's easy to see why. 31 homers at .294, WAR of nearly 6. The asking price feels really reasonable. It was around $15 million a year, but we don't need a catcher. We have Kyle Teal and we have Edgar Caro. Frankie Montas is interested in a contract offer, but we're going to lowball him because Marquez is the guy I would rather. Now, if we're going to sign Montas for $3 or $4 less million, then that'll make me change my mind. But I'd rather pay Marquez, so we're going to wait for him and then kind of see what he wants to do. This will be the deadline to change the 40-man. We're not going to add anybody. I mean, we're already full. Grant Taylor is the one I thought about, but we're not going to do it. Frankie Montas, if you were trying to scare me off with that offer, well done. I've lost motivation to sign with you. Damn. Another domino has fallen, and it is one of the biggest. Tarek Skubal returns to the Tigers. 7 years for $280. That's over $40 a year. Very well deserved for Tarek Skubal. He waited until free agency. It makes sense. He is a Boris client, and he got a lot of money to stay in Detroit. He's been the best pitcher in baseball if you connect the body of work over his last 3 years. And on one hand, as a Tigers fan, I'm pleased to see him coming back because I don't want to see him in any other uniform. But he is in our division, and that's frightening. 42 players on the 40-man. We have to change that. I feel like that's kind of stupid because the arbitration deadline is in like 2 days. Why can't we just wait? We're letting 4 guys go who are on the 40-man. So we're going to trade Dominic Fletcher. I think there is some value with him, and I just don't really need him. He's going to go to the Marlins for Zach Zubia, who was really good in Double-A last year. I don't know if there's a big league future with him, but as you can tell by his offensive upgrades, he was nice, and I rewarded him as such. 29 years old, 63 overall. He's probably just organizational depth, but it doesn't hurt to have more guys in the minor league system who can hit. And then Corey Lee, I'm going to trade him to the Rangers. Both of their catchers, Jonah Heim and Kyle Higashioka, are in free agency, and they really need catching depth. Corey Lee obviously isn't great, but as a backup, you'll deal with it. So we're going to add Danian Lumum. He was a 5th rounder in 2025. I like the offensive skill set. Now, he cannot play defense, and he only has deep potential, so again, probably minor league depth. But the guy can swing the bat. 98 players in the organization. We're going to have to cut it down to 93. Again, why can't we wait like 4 days? I figured, though, we can get rid of some guys in this group. Now, there are some players I missed, like Romeo Sanabria. Obviously, I want him back. The guys we traded for, Leonardo Balcazar, Damian Lunam, and Zach Zubia, obviously, I want to bring them back. I don't know why Cobb Hightower is in here as well. He's a pretty relevant prospect, so we're going to make sure he's back. It's a good thing I checked. But of all these relievers, we don't need all these guys, so I ended up cutting 5. The most notable is Jared Schuster, who was on our team and got some playing time in the big leagues back in Season 1, former first-round pick of the Atlanta Braves. Another day of free agency. German Marquez is still not ready for an offer. I think next week we'll finally be able to do it. There have only been 4 signings across baseball. Ha-Seong Kim is the only one we did not talk about. He's back on the Rays. So we'll simulate a week later. Shane Bieber is a Brewer, 4 years, $90 million. So the Guardians and the Brewers swap Freddie Peralta and Shane Bieber. Both guys are really good in this game, but I think it works out especially well for Milwaukee because I think Bieber's a little bit better and he's a little bit cheaper. I wouldn't be too upset if I was a Cleveland fan, but I think Milwaukee got slightly the better end of that. German Marquez is finally ready for a contract, and I really want to make this work. I'm willing to overpay a little bit. 1 year, $16.6 million, and then Montas, we're going to go low again, just as a backup plan in case German Marquez does not happen. So we're about to reach the tendering contracts deadline. I just ended up tendering everybody left. I lowballed all of them so they wouldn't be making too much money. We're going to simulate another week. We've got another big signing. Drew Rasmussen to the Dodgers for a bargain. 3 years, $27. That is a steal. Now, he wouldn't have signed with us for that. It'd probably be 3 years, $57. Contract decision on the way for Frankie Montas. I'm sorry, my phone must be malfunctioning. It is showing your offer is a joke. German Marquez, meanwhile, sock it to me. I'm signing with the White Sox. Why does everybody we sign have to be a weirdo? Nonetheless, German Marquez is a Chicago White Sox. Our top target is coming home. And Chris Sale is going to the Brewers. 2 years, $70 million. That's a lot of money. He is still really good, though. This rotation is going to be filthy, adding Shane Bieber and Chris Sale along with Brandon Woodruff. They still have Dylan Cease, of course, who they paid big money to last year. They're probably not going to be able to bring back Nestor Cortez Jr., who had a great year. But Chris Sale is an upgrade, so I think they'll live with that. So there's no need for Frankie Montas now that we have signed German Marquez. Marquez and Thorpe, I think, are locks for the rotation. Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith, I would think, will be in the opening day rotation. And then the last spot is an open competition. Owen White, Jonathan Cannon, Jagger Haynes, Jairo Iriarte, Wilkeman Gonzalez, Prelander Baroa. All of those guys are fighting for those spots. Don't forget, Marquez can hit the ball as well. 241 career average. I think he could play a role offensively, and I'm not even entirely joking. His contact ratings against both sides are higher than Benny Montgomery, to put it into perspective. So it really would not be unreasonable to think that he might get some bench hit opportunities. The dude can legit swing the bat. We have some more movement across the league in terms of signings, but still not that many. I imagine that'll change pretty soon. The guys who were not offered arbitration are now here. I really want to sign Edward Cabrera. He's the best pitcher I've ever had in a franchise series, but he had an ERA of 10 last year. In terms of notable position players, there's Nolan Shanuel, Nick Gonzalez, Ernie Clement, Oswald Peraza, Johnny DeLuca, Wenzel Perez, Chicago native Alec Thomas. This is where we signed guys like Bailey Falter last year. That ended up being a hit. Jesus Sanchez was a miss. Andrew Monasterio was with this group as well. Guys who are young, talented players, but it just hasn't really worked out. None of those names specifically interested me all that much. So I think we're going to send our attention to the bullpen now. Cionel Perez had a great year with the Orioles last year, 2.08 ERA. His whip was a little high, but he's a guy who I think we're going to target. He's not that old. I think he's only 29, so he wouldn't hurt our average age that much. And then Brian Abreu with the Astros. He had a terrible season last year, the opposite of Perez, but he's a guy with an impressive body of work. He's had some good seasons with the Astros, and again, he's not all that old. He wouldn't really be hurting our team's average age a whole lot. So I think these are the two guys we're going to look to add to the bullpen. I don't know if I want both of them. Cionel Perez is definitely my preferred choice, but Brian Abreu would be a good fallback. So with that, we're going to get to one of the really exciting parts of the offseason, the winter meetings. We're going to have a lot to go over here. We're probably going to see a lot of free agent signing. We've got the Rule 5 draft where we added guys like Cody Hosey and Inoli Paredes last year. So we'll see if we can potentially add some more talent. And there's also one other big event that comes up right before the Rule 5 draft. And it's something that I have been dreading. The draft lottery. Here we go. At least the draft lottery will not be rigged this time. Although last year it wasn't even rigged because the first spin we got the 7th pick, which was the worst case scenario from number 1. We had the best odds last year. We had the 7th pick. The year before, we didn't even have odds. We had the 10th pick. This year, we had the number 2 odds. For the love of God, can we finally get a top pick? Please. Okay, I'll live with that. The number 2 pick in the draft. Not a lot of changes. The Nationals still have 1. The Rockies have 3. The Astros jump up 3 spots, passing the Blue Jays, Marlins, and Cardinals. And then there's no changes from 8 onwards. I'll take it. That's a win. Last year we got royally screwed. The guy I really wanted ended up going 6th. My backup plan ended up going 5th, right before us. This year, if there's 2 guys I really want, we'll get one of them because we had the 2nd overall pick. I'm fully prepared for there to be a generational prospect who the Nationals pick at number 1, and then we kind of get screwed over. I'm ready. Another day to offer free agents. Cionel Perez and Brian Abreu are our 2 targets. As I said, Perez is the guy I'm targeting, so we're going to wait it out with him. Rule 5 draft is here. We had the second pick in the first round of the Rule 5 draft. We had 3 open spots on the 40-man roster, and the Nationals did not pick anyone, so we have our full choice of anybody we want here. I don't think there's as many good choices as last year, but we are going to use one pick on right-handed relief pitcher Declan Cronin. 29 years old, 69 overall. He is in the St. Louis Cardinals system, had some solid seasons with the Marlins. Actually started his career with the White Sox in 2023, so welcome back. I like the skill set, throws hard, has really good stuff, and I think there's some intriguing long-term upside with him. So he's going to be the only guy we picked. There isn't really anybody else I was all that interested in, so we are going to skip our selection here in the second round. So he's going to have to earn his spot on the big league roster in spring training, and if he doesn't make it, he'll be returned to the Cardinals. Hopefully, Cronin is able to get a spot, though, in the bullpen. Ryan Jeffers back to Minnesota, 2 years, 26. That is not a lot of money for a guy who's a really good player. If we needed a catcher, I probably would have been all over this because that is ridiculous value. I don't know why catchers ask for such little money in this game. Rival opportunity, Nico Horner. I'm good. He was awful last year. His OPS started with the number 5. I think I'm going to pass. Ciano Perez is now above 50%, so we are going to offer him a deal. I'm only looking for 1 year. I think $5.5 million is fair. And then again, we're going to wait on Brian Abreu for the time being. Contract decision for Perez. You've caught my attention, but you haven't convinced me yet. Okay, so he doesn't hate our offer. That's a good sign. We're going to offer him a little bit more. 1 year, a little bit under $6 million. This offer isn't quite right to get this negotiation past the finish line, but we're close. Wow, Jack Flaherty stays in the AL Central. He's a Cleveland Guardian. 7 years, that's a lot of money. Flaherty's had 3 really good seasons in a row for Detroit, though, so I get it. Cleveland loses Shane Bieber, but they add Freddie Peralta and Jack Flaherty. That rotation is going to be filthy. Another opportunity to offer Perez, 3rd time's the charm. That's literally the max. And he says, yes, I'm ready to take my talents to the south side. So not only are we getting a good reliever, but he's not a complete freak like all the other guys who wanted to sock it to them. So Perez will compete to be our closer. He was certainly better than anybody we had in the bullpen last year. Whoa, here's a big one. Garrett Crochet to the Mets. 8 years, $360. So remember how Kyle Schwarber had those invisible opt-outs in his contract? Well, despite winning the MVP, he decided to opt in, and this is why. He wanted to put the Mets in position to pay a big-name free agent, and they do it with Crochet, who's been the best pitcher in baseball over the last 2 years. If you're Boston, would you go back and make this trade again? Because you got 2 dominant seasons out of Crochet, but they were not able to re-sign him, and they traded away some really good players. Kyle Teal is already basically a top 10 catcher in baseball. Braden Montgomery was great in the big leagues over the last couple of weeks. Wilkerman Gonzalez was phenomenal in AAA, and Chase Maedroff is still a good prospect in our organization. So I would think in hindsight, the Red Sox probably would not make that trade over again. The Mets, meanwhile, now the highest paid hitter in the league with Juan Soto and the highest paid pitcher with Garrett Crochet. I'm not counting Shohei Ohtani because he is both of those things. We still have Brian Abreu here, but I don't really think we need him with signing Ciano Perez and drafting Declan Cronin in the Rule 5 draft. I do really want to add one more impact bat, but we have to keep our average age under 26.6. Yandy Diaz, I would have been all over. I think that would have been a great pickup for us. Maybe one of these outfielders. We're familiar with Ian Happ. Randy Rosarena would have been a fun get. But we've got to stay young, so I'm not going to go after those guys. Keegan Aiken to the Phillies. That's a big get for them. But the Orioles got Jose Alvarado. So both teams swapped their star lefty relievers. Jazz Chisholm returns to the Yankees. 6 years, I think a little under 160. He had a great year for them last year. His 2 highest WAR seasons were with the Yankees, so this is a no-brainer for both sides. I think that's a pretty good move, and we're just going to continue to simulate. There's not really much else for us to do. Let's take a look at the entirety of free agency, though, across baseball. There were some interesting signings that we have not been able to go over yet. Still some solid players, especially the relievers, left here in free agency. So in terms of other moves, Victor Robles to the Angels, Eugenio Suarez back to the Tigers, Matt Strum to the Astros, Nestor Cortez to the Red Sox, Cody Bellinger back to the Dodgers. That's a funny one. If there is a superstar available for trade, we'll talk about that a little bit later today, the Dodgers will be the team that gets them. They have an embarrassment of riches in terms of prospects, but they add Cody Bellinger as well. Pete Alonso back to the Cubs. That deal really worked out for them at the deadline. He played well down the stretch. As I mentioned, Jose Alvarado, he goes to the Orioles. The Reds ended up signing Seth Lugo. They also signed Chris Paddock, so they really did not need Bailey Falter, who I guess is going to be a long reliever. Nathaniel Lowe returns to the Rays, where he reunites with his brother Josh Lowe, and where he started his career. This is a big loss for the Twins. He was one of their best offensive players at the best season of his career. Jojo Romero, poor guy, goes to the Rockies. Taylor Ward to the Braves. Adolis Garcia to the Rays. Andrew Vaughn hit 25 home runs. He goes to the defending champion Milwaukee Brewers. Evan Phillips to the Orioles. Jonathan India to the Cubs. That's a big get. John Means to the Marlins. The Blue Jays had Jesus Luzardo and Casey Mize. Alec Boehm to the Angels. Nico Horner to the Royals. So the Cubs and Royals swapped second baseman for basically the same price, even though Jonathan India is way better than Nico Horner. I don't know what the Royals are thinking there. Luis Garcia will team up with Luis Garcia on the Nationals. Jorge Soler to the Red Sox. Frankie Montas to the Rangers. Brandon Lau to the Dodgers. Joe Jimenez back to the Tigers. Jordan Montgomery to the Giants. Davis Martin to the Mets. Yandy Diaz to the Yankees. Bryce Wilson to the Rockies. He had a weird year after his suspension. He played really well early, and then over the last month, his numbers tanked. And now the poor guy's going to Colorado with Patrick Sandoval. Salvador Perez to the A's. Wow. And Mundo Sosa gets 7 years from Seattle. Randy Arozarena goes to the Phillies. Clayton Kershaw returns home to the Rangers. Dalton Varsho back to Toronto. And Ryan Mountcastle to the Reds. Here are the results in terms of arbitration. There weren't any super big ones for us because none of our notable players are in the stage of arbitration. And the budget looks like $96 million. I explored some trades. I don't think we're going to make any now, though, but we are in position to be flexible in the future. And look at our team's average age. 26.6. It's exactly 1 year younger than last year's. We had some help with some of the younger guys here, Oswaldo Escobedo and Douglas Cato being 19 years old. They don't technically have to be on the opening day roster. It is just a projection. And based on ratings, Escobedo is a lot better than guys like Nick Maton and Andrew Monasterio. So if Escobedo plays well, he will probably start the year in Chicago with the White Sox. If not, there's a good chance he makes it up to the big leagues soon. So I'm excited to have him finally up in the major leagues. One of the best prospects in this system, and obviously a guy we're hoping to build around. I like where the team is at going into the year. I know we didn't really make that many changes. Herman Marquez, Cionel Perez, Sonny Santillan, and Declan Cronin are the only new players. There are no new position players. It's the exact same group as last year. I wanted to add one more bat, particularly an outfielder, but there wasn't really a move for us to make without altering our average age. And remember, we had no room for flexibility in terms of the age. I think the pitching staff gets better, though. The bullpen looks a lot better. I think the rotation's going to improve. And with the lineup taking major strides last year, there's no reason to think that they won't be pretty solid again. Plus, we're going to have a lot of flexibility going forward now that we have owners who are actually going to spend money. Let's talk trades around the league for some other teams. The Tigers re-signed Tarek Skubal, but they lost Jack Flaherty. So they're going to add the hometown kid, Hunter Brown, who was dominant in 2025. Not very good in 2026, though. The Astros are looking to retool. They were really bad last year, and the dynasty, it's not just dead. It's like way dead. That team is going to be rough. The Tigers, most of their core is going to be a free agent within the next 2 years outside of Skubal, especially like the bullpen. So they realize now is the time to go all in. This is their championship window. Jace Young is returning home. He'll share a division with his brother as he goes to the Astros along with Brent Denny, the Tigers' first-round pick in this year's draft. Big get for Detroit while the Astros start their rebuild. Yordan Alvarez only has 2 years left. They didn't trade him today, but he could be on the move in the future. Bailey Ober getting traded from the Twins. This might seem like a weird one at first because the Twins won 99 games. He's made the All-Star team 2 years in a row, but he really ended last season off poorly. The Twins left a bad taste in their mouth, and they don't really want to pay him $150 million, give or take. Atlanta's on their last legs. They are coming off a really disappointing season, and this is their last effort. A.J. Smith-Shawver, who's going to compete to be in the rotation, and Claude Ray are headed to Minnesota. The Nationals are trading away Mackenzie Gore. He is going to the AL Central. The Cleveland Guardians adding a big-time arm. The Guardians were very aggressive in terms of pitching. They added Freddie Peralta. They added Jack Flaherty. Of course, they have an elite bullpen. And Mackenzie Gore has gotten better and better and better each year. At 28 years old, he's an ascending young player who I would want to take the chance on because it really seems like he's only going up. So the Guardians are going to be giving away Kyle Manzardo, who had a really good season in the minors last year, but they don't really need him because they have Josh Naylor under contract for a while. Angel Ganayo, really good infield prospect. The Guardians are very trapped in the middle infield. Ganayo doesn't really have a spot. And then Jake Fox, a super utility man who's kind of the throw-in. A lot is going back to the Nationals, though. I think it's worth it, though, for Cleveland. Mackenzie Gore is really good. Next up, probably the biggest trade. O'Neal Cruz is headed to the Dodgers. I said they're going to be star hunting. And O'Neal Cruz is a big get. They'll have him for the next 2 years. I believe he started his professional career with the Dodgers before being traded away. Over the last 3 years, Cruz has finally turned into the player we thought he would. 9 WAR combined over the last 2 seasons. The Dodgers' one weakness is their outfield. They'll be trading away Landon Knack, who they don't need, but will be a starter in the Pirates rotation. And Jose De Paula, who's a really good outfield prospect. That's a nice get for Pittsburgh. If there is a superstar available, though, the Dodgers will get them, whether it's Yordan Alvarez. I think Ronald Acuna could be available if things go south in Atlanta. The Dodgers just have an embarrassment of riches. In terms of the pitching, Emmett Sheehan, Gavin Stone, River Ryan, Dustin May, Jackson Ferris, Bobby Miller. Those guys are all really good, and they're all not in the rotation. In terms of prospects, Zahir Hope, Kellen Lindsley, Alex Freeland, Ryan Ward, Dalton Rushing. They have an embarrassment of riches. So the Dodgers are going to get whatever superstar they want, not because they're the Dodgers, but because they have by far the most to offer. Wilson Contreras is going to the Twins. He's been one of the most consistent offensive players for a decade now, and they need a first baseman badly. They have not replaced Nathaniel Lowe. Alfredo Gutierrez, a third-rounder in 2025, and Tanner Schobel, a first-rounder in 2022, are going to the Cardinals. It's not a lot, but you got to keep in mind he is 34 years old. And then last but not least, the defending champs adding C.J. Abrams from the Nationals, who's made 3 consecutive All-Star appearances and has 2 years left of team control. I was surprised to see that his trade value was so low. The Nationals are getting 2 solid infield prospects with Cooper Pratt and Andres de la Cruz. I feel like C.J. Abrams should cost more. I get the WAR isn't that high. I get he's not a great defender. But C.J. Abrams and Bryce Terang and that Brewers middle infield, that is going to be fun and that is going to be fast. That sets us up here in spring training. We can now extend Luis Robert if we want, and he's going to be asking for over $30 million per season. As for international free agency, I know I said it was going to be today, but I figured we would have time for one of trades around the league or IFAs. And obviously, I picked trades around the league. So we're going to save international free agents for the next episode. I promise this is actually where we're going to show them. I will edge you guys for one more episode, and then we're going to show the prospects along with going through spring training and the first couple of weeks of the regular season in year number 3. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'm really excited for this season. I'm really excited for these young guys to hopefully take the big step that we've been waiting for. This team should not win 60 games again next year. I think this team is hopefully going to be competitive and, at the very least, a hard out. That'll wrap up the episode, though. Let me know what you thought of our offseason down below. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out.